Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time is when we're live, right here on Genesis Communications Network, GCNLIVE.com, GCNlive.com. And thank you, Ron Gibson, for picking up USA Prepares and putting us on YouTube on the Ron Gibson channel. Jason's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota, and Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
I'm really well. Guineith, I received your emails, and here's what I did. And let me just give a class a brief introduction. I got a call from Bert Bertonis in California. He's a radio frequency engineer, a patent holder in electronics, advanced electronics. And he and I were talking about taking America back and how we're going to do it. I mean, just, there are big corporations that are involved in the demise of this country. There are takeovers involved in the demise of this country. There are governments, state, county, local, involved in the federal, involved in the demise of this country. And, of course, the international bankers. So what are we going to do? So he and I are going to talk about how we can pick ourselves up by the bootstraps again and do that. That will be Friday, hour number 2. Now, today, Guineith Isaacs, class, I asked Jason. I sent him an MP3 file, an audio, 59 seconds, that Guineith sent me, and I listened to it. And I think it's extraordinary. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about, here's a gal in Australia. She lives in the middle of nowhere on a farm with no connection to the grid. She generates her own electricity, and she produced her own commercial. It's a radio commercial. It has not been aired anywhere. And you're going to hear it the first time. And the reason that I want you to please pay attention to this is what you can do if you want to pick yourselves up by the bootstraps and start your own business. Okay? You can do this. She did it. She did it with the same equipment that she uses here to communicate with me. She has a computer that she used. She figured out what software she needed to download. And I'm pretty sure she used Audacity. We haven't discussed it, but we'll discuss this.
That's right.
Okay.
It was Audacity, actually.
Okay. Audacity is free. You can download Audacity free, and I use it here at the farm. I use it for broadcasting. And so I wanted you to hear this particular commercial. It's about her book. And she's quite the author. I would stack Guineith Isaacs up against any novel writer on the planet. I kid you not. And when you hear this commercial that she did all by herself, in her farm, in her own voice, I think you will be impressed. I was. So the point is, here we are, we're being beaten up by the big bad corporations, the big bad governments, the little governments. We're being beaten up by warranties that are no longer being honored. There's nobody to call. So what are you going to do? The answer is you're going to have to take care of yourself. And here's a shining example of a gal, a single mom. Her husband died. She raised her children. She's an author. She's a farmer. She's a broadcaster. And she figured out how to do it. She figured, no one put a gun to her head and said, you're going to write this commercial, you're going to produce this commercial, you're going to voice this commercial, and you're going to add the sound effects. You're going to do this at the muzzle of a gun. Nobody did that. She did it all on her own. And she's a shining example of hard work, perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, ingenuity, and the mother of invention, necessity. It's impressive, Guineith. I can't pat you enough on the back to say how impressive I thought this was. I mean, right out of the gate, it's as good as a commercial advertisement, meaning one you'd hire somebody to do. So, any comments about what I've said, Guineith? Is any of that inaccurate?
I didn't have any money to pay anyone to do it. I had to do it myself. But I should make a few notes here. My book writing's a hobby. I haven't really made any significant money off it. Any money that I would make off it would not be income. It would be used to put towards my hobby of radio broadcasting. So that means it's not taxable. And it's not income. So I just have to point that out for anyone who might be listening. And as well as that, I have to give credits to the musician. His name is called Gary Seiler, and he is a very fine musician. He's one of the best of the traditional folk musicians who's out there. When the world was normal, he made his living doing Renaissance fairs. Doing the music for Renaissance fairs. These days he makes his living from record sales. So if anyone wants to go out and check out his work, I'm sure they'll be impressed. He's a good friend of mine, and I've used the music in this recording with the permission of Mr. Gary Seiler, and the song is called Bartholomew Roberts. And, he has his own YouTube channel, which is Gary R. Seiler. That's I think it's Garry or Gary RSILER. And, I would encourage everybody to go out and buy his records because that's how he makes his living. Okay. And, that's it. Let it roll.
Okay. We'll play it in the next segment. Jason, is getting it ready. And, as soon as Jason tells me, in the back channel that it's ready, I'll introduce it, and he'll play it. So it'll probably be next segment. Guineith, you sent me a video, and I shared it with some of our instructors about what's happening in Australia with, the store shelves. Do you want to talk any about that? What is really happening in terms of supply chain shortages, specifically food?
Yeah, I don't live in Melbourne. I don't want to live in Melbourne. Melbourne has turned into a concentration camp. It's guarded by the police and by the army. They're not letting anyone in or out. I don't know what the postage system is like, but I know that the store shelves in Melbourne are getting quite empty. And not only that, you also... the borders of Victoria have been shut with every other state in Australia, and they're not letting any people in or out. And I don't know I think that freight probably is coming in because I've had some shipments come in of supplies that I needed, things that I bought on eBay. So I think that trucking is still happening interstate, but it's getting pretty dire because I don't think that they're able to get the quantity of food in, and I think that people are panic buying. Does that make sense, Vincent? And you're definitely leading to empty store shelves in Melbourne. And I don't know how it is in Bendigo or any of the other regional cities in Victoria because I haven't been out in a week, and a lot can change in a week at the moment. And even, I don't think I went into the supermarket the last time I went into town because I had other projects happening, that needed my money. But yeah, it's getting pretty dire out there. So if anyone needs to stock up with food, they should not delay in doing that if they live anywhere in Victoria, because eventually I believe that they will do lockdowns across the whole of Victoria, which will make it very difficult for anyone to move from place to place. Does that make sense, Vincent?
Yeah, it does. Tomorrow, class, I've been preparing a special broadcast on a couple things. One, it will be 2 hours of me, tips from my unfinished, unpublished, not available for sale book. And it includes refrigeration, your home heating and air conditioning system, your heat pump system, automobile refrigeration, etc., and what you can do about it, and the scams that are going on by the people who allegedly are there to fix your refrigeration systems. And I'm going to tell you about what they're doing. I'm going to tell you how you can prepare and protect yourself from it. And I'm going to tell you how you can prevent some of these failures. That's one thing. Next thing I'm going to do is I prepared a short list of items that you should consider obtaining right now. Now, that short list is probably going to take me an hour to go through. It might even take longer. So that's my plan for tomorrow, because I really absolutely positively believe that there will be a food shortage this year. This year. As a farmer, I believe that, because I can feel it. I've gone outside for weeks now, for a month now, and we had rain last night. We had possibly maybe an eighth of an inch, maybe, and we had an eighth of an inch a day or so before, but it all evaporated. I mean, instantly. It's evaporating as it hits the ground. The ground is still dust. So it was like teasing the grass, teasing the trees, teasing the plants, teasing the garden. So I believe that there will be a reduction in the in food that's grown. I believe that. And as a result, I think you should get what you need now. And I'll tell you what those items are tomorrow. It's a short list. It might be, well, it's over 50 items right now. It might hit 100 by this afternoon. And I keep adding to it. Just as my book, I just keep adding and adding and adding. So that's the plan for tomorrow. Guineith, in the United States, federal forces have been assigned to Portland, Oregon, among other places. And there are protesters, and they're called moms, M-O-M-S, like in mum or mother. Okay? And they are these protesters, just mothers, women. And President Trump sent the troops in to push them back. So now we have the federal government, federal agents, pushing back mothers with tear gas. Tear gas.
Oh, boy.
So we have this wall of moms. They took to the streets Tuesday night to protect the presence of the protest, the presence of federal agents. And the agents are using tear gas. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. And she produced this commercial. She wrote it. She produced it, recorded it in her own voice. And would you say that you used a brogue type of voice as the person in this commercial, Guineith?
I did.
Okay. All right.
I used to be married to a Scottish, my husband when he was alive. Okay, he was a Scottish Highlander. And I got into the way of speaking in the same way that he did, so I kind of reverted back to that way of speaking.
Okay, let's hear it. One quick question before we play it. How long did it take you to make this commercial?
Together with the script writing and all the editing and the voiceover, probably about 2.5 days.
Okay. 2.5 days. It's a 59-second radio advertisement. Jason, would you play that, please?
"300 years ago, Captain Bartholomew Roberts, the teetotaling pirate king, ruled the oceans with a curious blend of diplomacy and brutality. The Lover of the Pirate King is the first novel ever to tell the extraordinary tale of the relationship between himself and his lover and soulmate, pirate surgeon George Wilson. It is a tale that is destined to become a classic of literature, so to obtain your personal copy of this remarkable book, go to www.theloverofthepirateking.com.
You never would have guessed he was a pirate.
There you have it. And so if you're interested in buying this book, you can go to theloverofthepirateking.com. Gwyneth, what do you have on Amazon right now?
I've actually, if you go to theloverofthepirateking.com at this instant, it probably won't be live because I had to let that slide because financial hardship, and I had to let the money go to other things. But it will be made live probably in about a week's time again. But if you want to buy the book, the best place to buy it is on Amazon at the moment. And so if you go to Amazon.com and type in The Lover of the Pirate King, then you'll see it. And it's got my name as the author, Guineith Isaacs. And you can buy it from there. And it costs $25 shipped. And I've also written a prequel and a sequel to the book as well. And they are both available now. And the sequel only just went live today, yesterday that is, Wednesday our time. All three of them, everybody who reads them wants to read more. They describe the books as being unputdownable, page-turning, and exciting. It's basically a classic swashbuckling pirate adventure romance. That is there's a whole world that is created there, and it's a mixture of historical events and fiction. So it's not pure history, okay? If anyone goes to the books and they want pure history, there's other books you can read. But it's one of these books that's written, and I've taken historical facts and I've just wove it into a jolly good swashbuckling yarn, if that makes sense, Vincent.
Yeah. Gwyneth, can you describe what the environment was like when you were writing this book? Do you write it at night? Do you write it during the day? Do you write it in pieces? Do you go out and do your farm chore, take care of the animals, come back, write some, go back out, take care of the farm, come back, write some? When we come back from this break, would you share with us what the environment is like when you're writing? Are you writing inside your farmhouse? Are you writing outside? Are you under a tree? Are you in the sunshine? Is it a mixture? What gives you these thoughts? How do you put this all together? And I think our class would be interested in what that environment is like. We'll be right back with Guineith Isaacs. So we're talking about taking back, America and Australia and other countries that have been decimated by the corona panic. And don't forget that this came from China. And China has taken the world down with this invisible disease. And the ensuing panic. It's crippling economies. People are losing their jobs. People are committing suicide. People are being locked down. Travel's restricted. Production's restricted. And so you can, if you want, make your own way. And the president, Donald Trump, said something like this, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but he said something like, try something different. Okay, so, so we threw you out of your job. You've been laid off. Try something different. And, of course, try something different. Because you're being told what you can and can't do. The rules are being written by a bunch of buffoons. And they're killing us. So you have an opportunity to do something different. And I'm not saying do it because he said so. I'm saying because it's a necessity. So Guineith, when you write, what is the environment like? Where are you when you write? Or do you write in different places?
I usually sit in my chair in my living room by the fire. So basically I go out and I get wood and I do my chores. And then I sit down with my computer by my fire and I write. And I might write for 8 or 9 or 10 hours at a stretch with very little break when I'm in book writing mode. And how this book came about is quite unusual because it was around about the end of 2018, actually, when The Lover of the Pirate King was written, and it was written in just 9 days. And this is a 248-page book. And I wrote it in 9 days. And what happened, oh my gosh. I've got to go into a bit of backstory here. In our past lives, my husband always used to boast that he was the teetotaling pirate king. And I used to say to him, what do you mean? And he used to say, I am the teetotaling pirate king. I said, well, what was your name? And he said, I don't remember, but I was the teetotaling pirate king. And so we did past life regression work, and we saw some details about who this teetotaling pirate king was. I didn't believe that there was such a thing. I thought it was a ridiculous idea. But anyway, we did past life regression, and we saw that I was his lover in that life, and that I was a surgeon, and that, that we were quite in love, but I had to disguise myself as a man. I was female, but for some reason that we couldn't see at the time, I had to disguise myself as a man. And so everybody thought that we were queer, that we were homos, but we weren't. That it wasn't safe for me, for whatever reason, to be female in that world, if that makes sense. And Archie was always saying, well, could you go on the internet and find out who this teetotaling pirate king is? And he remembered a lot of details about this life, and he would tell us stories of the things that he'd done in that life. And, he said that his memories were as clear as if he was remembering an earlier part of this life. Anyway, I said, oh, yeah, I will one day, and I never did until he died in 2003 of a heart attack, suddenly, one evening. And I was absolutely grief-stricken. I was in a state of shock. And about 3 months after he died, I just sat down at my computer one day and I said, right, I'm going to Google this. I don't believe that there even was a teetotaling pirate king. But I went on to Google and I typed in teetotaling pirate king and I found out all about Bartholomew Roberts, because that's what he's called in the history books, is the teetotaling pirate king, because he was a teetotaler. And he took over. I asked Archie, well, how many ships did you take then? And he said, oh, I lost count, but it must have been in the hundreds, at least 300 or 400. And Bartholomew Roberts took a total of 470 ships over a 2.5-year career. And anyway, when I was doing this historical research, I found out that Bartholomew Roberts did have an intimate friend who was a surgeon, and his intimate friend's name was George Wilson, and he was a doctor. He was a surgeon, and they were quite taken with each other. Even after they'd been apart for 7 months, they were very excited when they met each other again. And, you know, I said, oh my gosh, but, you know, it was amazing. But other events happened in my life, and I more or less completely forgot about Dr. George Wilson. And, you know, because life took over. And then at the end of 2018, I went into a phase that I didn't know what I should do. And I was saying, God, could you please show me what I should do with my life? Because, you know, I had the radio show. I was broadcasting with you at that time. But I kind of lacked direction. I didn't really know what I should do. And so anyway, I was kind of praying, and I worked as a psychic, incidentally. And I grew up in a haunted house. And I would see the ghost in the haunted house that I grew up in from time to time. So it wouldn't be the first time that a ghost has manifested around the house, but this ghost began manifesting around the house. And including that he left a selfie on my phone. And I've posted the selfie. It's posted on Amazon. And it's a ghost photograph of a pirate. And I believe that it's George Wilson, because I was getting these really strong past life impressions of being George Wilson. And I didn't ask for them. I didn't, you know, I didn't seek for this sort of thing to happen, but it just happened. And what happened was I began getting all these past life memories flooding back to me of what it was like to be there in that life. And, you know, I got to a point, I wrote the book, and then I said, oh, I'd love to find a photo of him on the internet, but I couldn't find a photo of him anywhere. And I was complaining about this, and then like about 2 days after that, I was taking some photos of some puppies that I was going to sell. And I was looking through the puppy photos, and there's this photo of this ghost pirate in among the puppy photos. And that was quite remarkable. It's really, and I just sort of thought, I've got to do something with all of this that's going on the inside of me. And so I sat down and I said, right, I'm going to write a novel. It doesn't have to be historically accurate, but I'm just going to write, because somehow I have to process this and I have to get it out of me and I have to get it down somewhere else, more or less even just to externalize it. Okay? And like that was how The Lover of the Pirate King was written. And it was more or less a byproduct of the ghost of George Wilson showing up in my life. I asked later why he had come here. I said, why are you here? And he said, there's a war coming. You need to get ready. And I went, what? Because remember, in 2018, we were preparing. We knew that something was coming, but we didn't necessarily know what, right, Vincent?
That's correct. Absolutely correct. And we've been warning people about it. Yes, we have.
Yeah. But and I mean, I don't use Ouija boards. I don't use anything like that. This was just communication internally in my meditation time. Okay? And that was how it happened. And George Wilson said, I'm here to get you ready because there's a war coming and you need to get ready. You need to prepare yourself. And about 2 weeks after George Wilson showed up, the ghost of another past life self showed up, and that was the ghost of Lady Catherine Ferrers, who was the Wicked Lady of Mark Yates' cell. And in another part, when Archie and I were doing our past life regression work, back in 1998, we went back further than when he was the teetotaling pirate king, because we had a sense that there was an earlier life, and we saw that we were a pair of highwaymen and that we were nobles, and we lived as nobles during the day. But at night, we changed our clothes and we went out and we robbed people. And we were quite vicious and quite notorious, and we got more vicious and more notorious as the time went on. And about 2 weeks after George Wilson showed up, Lady Catherine Ferris showed up, and she selfie bombed my son's cell phone. And I'm going to post that selfie bomb on my Facebook page in the morning, because my son was sitting at home. I was out and about with my horse probably at the time. I think I was with my horse at the time. And, he was sitting at home and he just decided he was going to take a bunch of selfies. So he was taking these selfies of himself, and then, he looked at them afterwards, and there's this figure standing in the background of a masked woman, elegantly dressed, with a string of beads around her neck, and she had a mask on, a highwayman mask, not a face mask, an eye mask on. And, we didn't know who she was. And then, by chance, I happened to come across the story of Lady Catherine Ferris on the internet, and it fitted exactly with what my husband and I had seen all those years ago, and also dreams that I'd had since I was a little girl of, exploring tunnels and chambers underneath the ground and underneath a big house. And the last time I had that dream was around about end of October, beginning of November of 2018, and I dreamt that I was exploring the tunnels and the chambers, and then I went up through a staircase and came out in the back of a chimney into a big manor house, and it was my house. And that was the last time that I had that dream.
We're going into a break. We'll be right back with Guineith Isaacs. Yesterday afternoon, I had the pleasure of chatting with a gentleman who is one of our students. His name is Chance, lives in West Virginia. And he called, and we were talking about, USA Prepares and the broadcast, and he listens every day. Stays up late, picks us up on the satellite in the wee hours of the morning. And he mentioned that he learns something with every broadcast, which is different from a few of the other broadcasts he listens to. He used to listen to a lot of we'll call it alternative radio, and he doesn't anymore because he says the content is lacking. But he listens intently to USA Prepares. And he happened to mention, and I didn't say to him, so, who do you like of the faculty? Now, he mentioned, he said, I really like Kathy in Ohio. She has such a wealth of information. And I really like her. Then he mentioned Rich Eben. He really likes Rich Eben, who's well prepared and delivers and always shows up. And he mentioned Guineith Isaacs. And he said he really likes Guineith Isaacs. And, it's interesting, Guineith, that some of our class absolutely pay attention in class to what we say. And they can quote me on things I've said. They can quote you and Kathy and Rich Eben. And I'm just mentioning those names. Of course, there's Kyle and Sharon and John Reagan, and there's a whole bunch, George, in New Hampshire. There's a whole bunch of us that are quoted, things that we've said on the air. And I just wanted to let some of you know, and that list is not complete. But there are people who pay attention to what we say and they act on it. And the thing that they like about what we talk about, Guineith, is that the items are actionable. I don't even know if that's a word, but what I mean by that is we say things. On them. Yeah. You can act on them. We talk about gardening and canning and, whatever it is we're talking about. Hammering, sawing, wiring, whatever it is. And, that's different. So I've come to the term to describe most other talk radio. I mean, we're do radio. We teach how to do it, and we do it ourselves. And I think talk radio has become opinion radio. They listen to something on the news, they read something on the news, and then the radio has become their opinion of what they read or heard on the news. And that's completely different from us. I mean, yeah, we do some of that, but we do it with the intent to say, okay, here's what you ought to consider doing. For example, when you talked about the coming food shortage, which I absolutely positively agree to, not just because you said it, but because my independent research, my senses tell me that that's where we're headed. So I just want to let you know and let some of the other instructors know by way of what I just said that you are appreciated. And I certainly appreciate you, but it's not just me. It's the class. When I read part of your first book, I felt that it was extraordinary. So I've got to ask you, I've been to the university. I've written lots of papers. But your writing is beyond anything that I've ever seen any of my classmates write. What prepared you to write at that level, that extraordinary level of clarity, conciseness, impact, the way you deliver mental images to the reader? What prepared you for that?
I would say it's a combination of things. When I go to write a book, I go into I would say it's a trance state where I'm actually there in the place where where the events of the book are happening. And I see the events playing out before me, and then I write down what I see. That's how I write a book. So there's no big plan. It's like people say, oh, well, you've got to make the plan, chapter 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. That's not how I write a book. I write a book, I sit down at my computer with, my word processor software open, and I start writing, and I see the events playing out before me, and I get them out down on the keyboard. But I've got a background there as well of being a reader. And I've been reading novels since I was 9 years old. And these are the classics of English literature like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Robert Louis Stevenson, and and also more modern classics like Jean Auel and, what's her name? Various others.
Well, I'll tell you what. When we come back,
favorite authors.
When we come back, I'll tell you how I write, and we'll be right back with Guineith. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us. One of the kisses of death in radio is to comment on commercials and news. I can't believe what I think I just heard at the top of the hour news. They're talking about Black Friday. Black Friday is the informal name of the day following Thanksgiving Day in the United States. It's celebrated on the 4th Thursday of November. So the day after Thanksgiving Day has been regarded as the beginning of the United States Christmas shopping season, termed Black Friday. Allegedly, that means that stores have been running in the red, which means running a deficit, losing money. And on Black Friday, they sell so much stuff. That's the day that they actually go from losing money to making money. That's what Black Friday means. In the black. Has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter or black people. It has to do with two colors in the accounting ledger. Red means loss. Black means profit. Black is positive in that regard, in the accounting regard, and red is negative. So if you're running in the red, that means you're losing. You're at a deficit. Well, I believe I heard the term that Black Friday is the day after the turkey feast. What's the turkey feast? Is that a new holiday? It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And the guy who said that should be fired. It's not the turkey feast. It's Thanksgiving Day. To be thankful for all the wonderful things that we have been blessed with. That's what the day is. Thanksgiving. Thank you for the harvest. Thank you for the many blessings, God. Thanksgiving. Not turkey feast. Makes me angry, Guineith. Who are these morons? And you know what? If you don't like what I just said about that, if you're the guy who said it on the news, give me a call. We'll pay for the call. We can talk about it. 866-582-9933. Turkey feast. So when I write, what happens to me, my book is completely different. It is disjointed. It's a whole bunch of paragraphs about how I do things. It's choppy. It's a collection of events that I have been involved in. And here's what I've done about it, or here's what I do. So, for example, if I'm out in a shop and I'm working under a vehicle and I see something that is difficult and I figure out a way to fix it, I write that down. And then I put that into a paragraph or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how complicated it is. And that goes into the book. Or if I'm working on plumbing and I find a better, faster, easier, safer, more effective way of doing it, I write that down. Or if I'm working on an air conditioning system, which I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. Items from the book about air conditioning. Home air conditioning systems as well as automotive air conditioning systems. They both work with a refrigerant. I'll talk about that. Or if I find a better way to save money, I write that down. And I bought cases of these 70-page spiral-bound notebooks. At the time, they were on sale at the Chinese factory outlet for 17 cents each. And there was no limit, so I bought several cases of them. And I'm still using the books that I've had for over a decade. So I've got these cases of books, and when I fill up one, I just grab another one. And I use the same case of books or cases of books for my notes during the broadcast. So I have several that I've used for notes from my unfinished, unwritten, unpublished book that I talk about on the air. And I have others that I use for broadcast notes. And Mrs. Finelli thinks that I should throw them away, and I think that they make a really nice stack to collect dust. And I don't want to throw them away because they have all kinds of information. If I'm talking with Guineith, I've got all kinds of notes. If I talk with Norm Shuley, I've got notes, and I can go back and refer. I can refer to them. So my style is completely different, but the material is completely different. It's disjointed. It goes from plumbing to heating to carpeting to wiring to sheetrock to shingles to gardening. It's all over the map. So, but that's my writing style. And Guineith, now when I was at the university, I would get pretty good grades on my writing. And then the subtractions would come in. So they would say, this is pretty good, except for the fact that you didn't write on the topic that you were assigned. So that's 1 letter grade minus. So, I'd start out with an A. And because I didn't do what I was told, it would be a B. And then because I didn't type it, it would be a C. Because it was required that all writing assignments, be typed. And when I was in high school, back in the 1960s and the 1970s, and this will sound sexist, but it's not. It's just the way it was. Guys did not type. That was something that guys didn't do. Gals typed. Girls were secretaries. Girls were assistants. And I'm not saying that it was right. I'm just saying that's the way it was. So I didn't learn how to type. And you know those darn typewriters back then, they didn't have backspace keys. You know, if you hit the wrong key, then you had to figure out how to white it out or erase it or something like that, because there was no backspace key. And there was no cut and paste. And if you made a mistake, you know, it was kind of a permanent mistake. So I could only type with 2 fingers, and it took forever. So I would print it by longhand. That was much faster than typing, because I did it in pencil with an eraser. And that cost me, a whole letter grade just by doing that. And then by not doing what I was told, cost me another letter grade. But anyway, but now I can still type because of the backspace and the cut and paste. I can type a little faster. Not much faster, but a little faster. So I still write in longhand. I print, and, when I write the book, I use both, printing and cursive. And, sometimes I write so fast I can't read what I wrote, because it's sloppy. Kind of looks like a doctor's prescription. I don't know if they know what they're writing. But anyway, those are my thoughts on how I do it. Any comments on that, Guineith?
Well, it'll comfort you to know that the famous author Roald Dahl, who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Tales of the Unexpected, and many other fine books, he would go down to a gypsy caravan at the bottom of his garden, and he would have a stack of A4 yellow legal pads and a box of pencils and a pencil sharpener. And he would sit himself in this gypsy caravan for 3 or 4 hours at a time, and that's when he would write. And then he would send his handwritten texts, which were written in pencil. Oh, and he would have an eraser, I think, as well. And he would have his handwritten manuscripts, and he would send them off to a typist to get typed up and sent off to a publisher. And that was how Roald Dahl wrote his books. So, the ways of writing books, there's a multitude of different ways of writing books. And there's been a lot of very, very famous authors, some of whom have had very little what we would regard as book education. They have maybe learned how to read and write as adults, but they've had amazing and fascinating lives, and they just decided to write down the things that have happened in their life. And, there's one that comes to mind. I'm almost finished this book at the moment. When I get an afternoon where I just, don't have much to do, which is hardly ever, but his name is called A.B. Facey, Albert Facey, and he's a famous Australian author, and he wrote a book called A Fortunate Life. And he started out in terrible, terrible, abject poverty, growing up in the Australian bush, and he left home at the age of 9 and began working on sheep stations, sheep ranches. And, by the time he was 14, he was one of the best ranch hands out there. And by the time he was about 16 or 18 years old, he had enlisted in the military, and he ended up being at Gallipoli, at the Battle of Gallipoli, as, 18-year-old boy or whatever. And, all of the things that went on there. And he met, anyone who listens to the broadcast will remember that I was talking about a particular horse. There was a famous war horse called Bill, and he was called Bill the BSTRD or something. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that word on radio, but that was the name of his horse. And he was a stallion, and he was at the Battle of Gallipoli. And A.B. Facey actually had to do with this horse called Bill. And he had to do with another fellow called Simpson who had a donkey. And, he was able to relate how when Bill's rider, was shot at the Battle of Gallipoli, then, oh, no, hang on, what happened? Anyway, it was just really amazing stories. I can't remember all the details of them now. But this is the type of story, and this kid was basically almost completely illiterate, and yet he sat down with a box of pencils and some paper and memories, and he just began to write. And his book has sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies, and is today considered to be one of the great classics of Australian literature. And it is his autobiography, and, it's basically a true story of the early life of early Australians. And because of that, it's an absolutely fascinating read, but its historical value is there. I would encourage everybody to write, even if they think they can't write. And one way that is very good, which might suit your style of writing, Vincent, is to publish a collection of short essays. And that basically is what A Fortunate Life is it's a collection of short essays where each chapter doesn't have to be related to the other chapters, where each chapter can stand as a text on its own.
All right, we'll be right back with you. Yeah, we'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs with us. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Guineith, Rich Sheben has been mentioning to me, as well as other instructors, that they don't necessarily get their emails. And they send them and they're not received, and they're sent to our instructors and they're not received by our instructors. I got an email yesterday from someone I know pretty well. I've known him for years. He's been to meetups. He's been to all the expos. He has been on Doomsday Preppers. I recommended that Doomsday Preppers put him on the broadcast, the television broadcast. And he sent me an email that says, it appears that Gmail is now blocking email messages that until recently would have been delivered. Today I sent an email to a group of BCC recipients, that's blind carbon copy, on my preppers and militia email lists. The message included hyperlinks in the body and a PDF attachment. Gmail blocked the outgoing messages to all recipients, including myself. I tried resending without the hyperlinks. Still no joy. It appears that I may be able to solve this issue by creating one or more Google groups. So he said, please let me know if you don't want to be included on future emails from me via Google groups. And he said also, please let me know of which Google groups you would like to be included on: prepping, militia, current events, politics, and other. And so I responded to him and I said, I don't really think that particular company is on our team. So as much as I like receiving those emails from you, I'd rather not. But, if you want to send me an email individually, not as part of a group, that's fine. So that's where we are today. It really appears that we are being censored. We believed that if we sent something in an email, it would be not sanitized. It would go through regardless of what it said. And that's not the case. So who is not on our team? It looks like Google's not on our team. Looks like Microsoft's not on our team. It looks like YouTube's not on our team. And I'm talking about the Team of Freedom, the free speech team, that team. So it looks like big industry is deciding who they think should be CEO of the United States of America. They're deciding what we deserve to hear and what we deserve to hear as misrepresented. I can't even use the word information. I would say misrepresented items. It's this is a whole new world, because that's not the way I thought it was. That's not the way I was taught that it is. I was taught that the news was the news, not opinions, not to be misleading. But that's not true, because the news has been taken over, by the synagogue of greed. Yeah. The synagogue of control, the synagogue of manipulation. Any comments, Guineith?
Yeah, there are alternatives to Google, okay, to Gmail. I still have a Gmail address. I probably don't check it as regularly as I used to. But, I have other email addresses and email services that I use, okay? One of them that I like is Proton Mail, and that's protonmail.com. They are operated from Switzerland, which has the highest, the best cybersecurity laws in the world that are designed to protect people's privacy. And Proton Mail was set up by Swiss bankers for Swiss bankers and people who want to communicate with Swiss bankers. So, basically it was set up by the globalists for their own. And so it probably hasn't got as many back doors. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it's probably not got as many back doors as what a lot of other emails.
Guineith, let me read headlines from dailymail.co.uk. This is today. And I'd love to get your take on, do you think that this kind of thing is spreading around the world? Here it is, quote, Trump's troops push back against the wall of moms. That would be M-O-M-S, as in mothers. Trump's troops push back against the wall of moms. Federal agents use batons and tear gas to disperse helmet-wearing mothers protecting Black Lives Matter protesters on the 55th day of the Battle of Portland. That would be Portland, Oregon. It goes on to say, self-proclaimed wall of moms took to the streets Tuesday night to protest the presence of federal agents. The yellow-clad protesters acted as human shields between the federal agents and Black Lives Matter protesters. Cops armed with assault rifles used batons and tear gas to push back against the moms on Tuesday night. President Donald Trump's administration faces several suits over the deployment of federal agents. Trump is plowing ahead with his law and order takeover as he vowed to send 150 agents to Chicago. Goes on to say in the body of the article, Donald Trump's federal troops used batons and tear gas to fight off Portland's moms last night as protesters entered day 55 in the city amid growing backlash against the president's troops. Armed with assault rifles, federal cops pushed back against the helmet-wearing wall of moms who were protesting their presence in the city and acting as human shields for Black Lives Matter protesters. Footage showed the cops dispersing protesters with their bare hands and shoving some of the women in the chest while using tear gas to break up crowds Tuesday night. The group of mothers and fathers have been forming a human barrier between the demonstrators and the police at protests this week, amid allegations of brutality by the federal agents. And it shows. There's an image of this guy who looks like he's heavily armed. He's heavily armored. He's got a respirator on. He's got all kinds of tactical gear, a helmet. He's got, and he's grabbing this young, much smaller mother. And, you know, when it says they're wearing helmets, they're wearing like bicycle helmets. They're wearing, hard hats, like, if you were on a construction site, a hard hat, but mostly bicycle type helmets. I'm not talking about helmets like motorcycle helmets that are 3/4 coverage or full helmets. I'm just talking about these light duty, barely cover the top of your head ventilated helmets. You know, some of them are motorcycle helmets, and some of them are hard hats. And one of these women is holding up a sign, and it shows the Virgin Mary, the Catholic Virgin Mary, and it says, this handwritten sign. This is not a printed sign from a print shop. It's a handwritten sign with a drawing of a Virgin Mother on it. And it says, Mother Mary lost a son to state violence. Wow. And that's what happened. Mother Mary did lose a son to state violence. He was executed. Her son Jesus was executed by the state. And that's the kind of thing that's happening in the United States of America. So these women, they're all sizes and shapes. A lot of them, if not most of them, are white. And they are wearing yellow t-shirts. Most of them are wearing shorts. So they're not ready for combat. They're not dressed looking for war like the police and the military are that Donald Trump sent in. These are just plain old people wearing yellow t-shirts. Some are wearing long pants, some are wearing shorts. And they're protesting, and they're standing between the Black Lives Matter protesters and the federal armed agents. Any comments about, do you think that this kind of, I mean, there's tear gas, you can see tear gas in the air. You can see people pouring milk on their faces. And you can see that these armed agents, they look like they are military combatants. Full face shields, respirators, moon type helmets, and tear gas canisters being fired at the people. Do you think that this kind of violence is going to continue escalating? It's 55 days. 55 days so far in Portland. It has not let up. What are your thoughts, Guineith?
Okay.
One other thing.
Yeah.
The police have these shields. They're kind of like what the Vikings might have used, except instead of being round, they're rectangular. Okay. And they have, some of them are round. Some of them are like parabolic reflector types, plexiglass so they can see where they're going. Well, now the protesters are making up shields. And what are they using? They're taking OSB, which is oriented strand board, like siding, if you're building a house and you sheathe it with siding, that would be OSB, and then you'd put your vinyl siding or your cedar shakes or your brick or whatever it might be up next. So it's like, sort of like, we can call it plywood, but it's not plywood. It's called oriented strand board. It's maybe $15 a sheet at, the big box home improvement store. So I see them hand cut. I also see what looks like a child's snow slide, a plastic slide that a child would hop on and slide down the hill in the snow. That's being used as a shield. So what it is, it's David and Goliath. Okay. It is the military with all the armament they could possibly have against people with slides, using them as shields. And then some of the protesters are wearing what looks like bathing suits. These protesters are not out for war, but the government is out for war. Any comments on this?
Okay, BLM are not shining paragons of virtue. They are linked up with Antifa. But nevertheless, there's a lot of people who are in the BLM movement, and some of whom I know personally, that are genuine, honest-to-God people who are just fed up with the government. Okay? They don't realise that they're in a controlled opposition organisation, and the police are getting turned against the ordinary people of both America and Australia. And in Australia, the military and the police have joined forces and are enforcing the concentration camp that has become the city of Melbourne. That is, the Melbourne metropolitan area houses around about 3 million people and is now a gigantic concentration camp that will take you 2 hours to drive from one side of Melbourne to the other. It is huge. And I know people who live in Melbourne and they can't get to their retreat locations. They were caught out. And in fact, around here, where I live, there are a lot of people who bought their properties here as retreat locations, and the so-called quarantine, which basically means police on all of the outgoing and incoming roads into Melbourne, police and military barricades on all the roads, and they can't get out. The blockades went in with such precision and so quickly that they were caught unawares and they could not get to their retreat locations. And people have to think of that. And there's numerous people around here who bought their properties as retreat locations. They live in Melbourne, but they were not able to get to their retreat locations before this last lockdown came into force. And the police and the military blockaded the roads and are stopping everybody from getting in or out of Melbourne. And, I'm going, oh, no. They really basically have turned the whole of metropolitan Melbourne into a gigantic concentration camp. And the police and the military are not your friends. They are getting turned against the regular people here in Victoria. And I believe that it's only a matter of time before the regular people of Victoria begin losing their patience. And I have to put in the regular disclaimer that we always put in. I'm not planning anything, yada, 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 yada. I don't wish them any harm, yada, 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 yada. But I'm just saying that this is how it's going to go down. Blind Freddie could see it, as they would say in Australia. This is how it's going to go down. The regular people are going to get hacked off with the police and the military and their heavy-handed Bravo Sierra, and they're going to start kicking back. And I believe that that's what's going to go down in Melbourne.
Before July 4th, 2020, here on USA Prepares, we reported that we saw this coming. I said this. I didn't advocate it, but I said that I believe that fireworks would be used by the protesters, actually the rioters, against the police. So the police pull out the people demonstrate and they get beat up by the police. So it escalates. Then the protests become riots, and then the police escalate even more with more tear gas and more rubber bullets, and people get blinded and seriously hurt by the police. So then I said that I believe the next thing that we're going to see and learn is that the protesters are going to become rioters, and they are going to use fireworks as weapons. And these, fireworks that are rockets and they go up in the air and they explode, those things are going to be used by people rioting against the government. And that's what's happening right now. And it has been for a number of days. What's happening is people who are rioting are bringing umbrellas. And they're holding the umbrellas so that, to cover, like a shield in the front. But behind the shield, they've got these rocket launchers. And they're launching these fireworks rockets at the police. So it's been escalating. And I don't see how this is going to end nicely. And the other thing that they're doing is they're taking bottles. Now, you can throw a plastic bottle, and you might not hurt anybody with an empty plastic bottle. You might hurt someone if you had a soda bottle, a fresh soda bottle with soda in it. That might hurt somebody. And I'm not advocating doing this. But now what's happening is bottles are being frozen, like in the freezer. And maybe they're being filled with water, and they're being thrown at the government. So now these can hurt you. You get hit with a frozen bottle. It's like getting hit with a brick. So, Guineith, I just did a couple quick calculations during the break, and I was wondering, what are these guys thinking? I'm talking about the police, the government. What are they thinking? Because right now it's a David and Goliath situation. So the police are armed with all kinds of tools. They've got mine-resistant vehicles. They've got armored vehicles. They've got helicopters. They've got all kinds of tools. Of course, handguns and rifles and pistols and shotguns and things like that. They've got sound cannons. They've got water cannons. They've got electronic weapons. Well, there are 328 million people in the United States. And I believe that there are more than 328 million rifles, pistols, and shotguns in the United States. What I'm saying is the people outnumber the police. How much? Well, I looked it up, and it looks like there's about, typically, on average, for every 100,000 people, there are 300 cops. So that means there's about 333 people per cop, on average. So then I looked up, well, is that really true? That was my number. Well, it is true, because in the state of Oregon, there's, now, this would be officers per 1,000 people. There's 1.6 cops per 1,000 in Oregon, Washington. In Maine, in Minnesota, Utah, Idaho, there's 1.7 cops per person. In Iowa, Alaska, Montana, South Dakota, there's 1.8 cops per 1,000 people. Okay. Well, it goes on. So, when you get to, let's see, Oklahoma, there's 2.2. Same for Ohio, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Texas. And then Nevada goes up to 2.3, along with New Mexico, Hawaii, Wisconsin, Virginia, and Colorado. Goes up to 2.4 cops, North Carolina, Rhode Island, Connecticut. And then Missouri has 2.5 cops per 1,000. Now, when you go to a really, really dangerous place, like the District of Columbia, there's 7.5 cops per 1,000. So I think my number is right. One cop for every 333 people on average. Now, I don't think that the government is really thinking this thing through. As they escalate, and as President Donald Trump escalates with his sending more troops into, to shut down these protests, they keep escalating. Now, I understand we don't want to burn the cities down. I understand that. But I don't know if the president has figured out that there are more guns in the hands of the villagers than they realize. There's way over 328 million guns in the hands of villagers. And if farmers start passing out their guns, there'll probably be, 5 guns per person in the United States. Now, a gun would be a rifle, pistol, revolver, shotgun. These cops are outnumbered. And if they don't knock it off, what might happen next, and I'm not advocating it, that's the disclaimer, I'm not advocating it, but what might happen next is while these cops are getting really tough on protesters, the protesters might visit the cops' houses. Let's say 100 of them. There's no cop, I don't care how good of a shot he is, whether he's Wyatt Earp or John Wesley Harding, or it doesn't matter who he is, he's not going to be able to take on 100 people. I don't think they've thought this thing through. Any comments, Guineith?
Well, it's like this. What you're saying is true, but there's another facet to it as well, and that is that we are heading into a systemic collapse. And, things like mechanical devices, automobiles, things like sound cannons and high-pressure water sprayers, they need maintenance. And they are going to become harder and harder and harder to maintain because they've shut down the supply chain. And even if they've got a massive stash of spare parts, it's going to run out sooner or later. And I think it was Albert Einstein said something like that he had a pretty good idea what sort of war World War III would be, but he was also fairly sure that World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones. You know, that's just what he said, and that's quite, I can't remember the exact quote, but that's approximately the sum of it, meaning that he anticipated that it would end nuclear if there was ever another world war, but after that people would just go at each other with whatever they happened to get their hands on. And Winston Churchill said something. He said, people with full bellies don't riot. And I think he would know.
Guineith,
that's a really good quote.
If probably just as much as 1% of the villagers decided to flush their face masks, these masks that they're mandated to wear, if they just flushed them down the municipal toilets, it would back up the sewer system all across the country. I'm not advocating doing that. I'm just saying the municipalities better be on guard for that, because I think that's next. Thank you, Guineith, for being with us.